Sure. Thanks for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Duct Tape Marketing. You guys have been around for a long time. I think definitely on my radar. I think probably on a lot of our listeners and viewers' radar for a while. Been around for 30 plus years, and I don't think you were there the whole time. But I guess my first question is, I'm just curious. What in your experience, what lessons have you and John found to be timeless in that period?
Really, we have been around for about 30 years. I've been with the company for about 10. So I've learned a lot about duct tape marketing and how we approach marketing over the years. The biggest thing that I think set us apart originally and what we've really built our entire business around is thinking of marketing in a really systematic way. And so being really smart about how we start with strategy and mapping out a full plan, marketing plan moving forward. And then when we're actually moving into implementation, we're really detailed with our processes and how we onboard clients, and then how do we deliver them to them every single month moving forward. So I think that's been the biggest thing is thinking about marketing in that way for us.
Yeah, we talked about this on our last conversation, but I think it's definitely tough to build um, a sort of like franchise consulting based arrangement whereby people are learning a particular program and then reselling it or reteaching it to other people. It seems like something that takes a lot of experience to do, and my guess is that, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my guess is that a lot of the objection is, hey, I'm going to have to invest a significant, amount of time or money into learning this process that could change because things change fast, and especially now and so on. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts on like, what does it take in to build a program that's timeless, that, maybe it does change, but what does it take in to build like certain concepts that people are willing to invest in, and that stay at least relatively consistent over time? Like what's that involved?
Yeah. So we have our core concepts that have been timeless that we've been teaching for a long time. And that's, how we approach strategy. So things like defining your ideal client, your core message, building out your customer journey. Ways to get people to know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, refer from you. And so those are really timeless foundational things that don't really need to change because they're still really important. How we think about them a bit might shift, but they've always been important in marketing. And I think they'll continue to be. On that note, so those are our timeless things, but there also is, as you noted, a lot of things that are changing every day in marketing that you really have to stay on top of. And so it's finding those core foundational things, but also being open to the change and always continue to learn and improve as you go as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess with that in mind, what is changing now? What are you seeing out there?
I think the biggest thing, and actually John, the owner of Duct Tape, is writing a new book right now. He just turned it in. And so it's publishing next October. And the biggest thing that we're really focusing on moving forward with our marketing efforts is, it's not about enough to just get your name out there. It's more about connecting with people and really developing personal relationships with your clients and the customers that you work with. And so the whole foundation of the book is that, the ultimate referral engine for your business is actually your customer. And so the goal is to connect with them and help them transform and reach their goals. And so then they're willing to go out there and tell everyone they know about how great you are.
Yeah, that's cool. That's definitely informed kind of like how we've changed what we do in terms of like outreach and getting meetings for our clients, where it used to be a lot more about selling a particular company, right? Like we're this agency, we do these amazing things. Look at our great case studies. We work with people like you, and that used to work pretty well. Then it started kind of declining in effectiveness. And then for us, it's been about, how can we build a personal connection between our client and somebody that they're reaching out to, whether that person's in the ultimate role they want to get to or in a different related role that can refer them. So it's kind of cool that you guys are seeing the same things. I guess with that, what there's the sort of like textbook challenges that everyone's talking about, like everybody's remote and detached and having to figure out culture and all those things. I guess, are there any challenges that, and maybe it's just those, but are there any challenges that you didn't anticipate, or any things that a lot of your clients are up against that are surprising you or anything like that?
In terms of connecting with their audiences?
Perhaps, or just across the board
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah, with, obviously, as you identified, the whole working remote, you're not meeting in person. A lot of consultants in the past maybe were doing like where they're actually going to offices with their clients and doing like full day workshops and really connecting and getting the results. And so there's definitely been the shift of now you have to develop relationships working afar with people. But I think the one nice thing is now that more and more people are working from home and more people are working from remote, it's getting easier to connect with people on video because people are getting a lot more comfortable with it.
Yeah. Can you dig into that a little bit more? Like it's sort of weird because us and our company, we're kind of like fish in water, because we've been distributed for forever. So we've always done sales calls and client calls over Zoom. But are there any, and we've done some in person, but it's definitely the exception, not the norm. So I'd love to hear like what in your experience has changed in terms of how you guys teach, whether it's sales or client service, like what's had to adjust to Zoom, like tactically, how have things moved in recent months?
Yeah. Well, we actually are similar to you where, I've actually been working remote myself for 6 or 7 years out of my house. And so, and our organization is spread out and our clients that we work with as well. I've actually never met a client in person, face to face, like even prior to COVID, it's just not how we work. And so ourselves, we've been really comfortable with this remote. But where I would see the changes, a lot of times, when I was connecting with clients in the past or getting people on calls, like we'd turn on our video and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to be on video. I'm not comfortable. I'm not used to this. I'm not." And so I think the way other people have evolved to be able to accept video and be comfortable with video and be able to connect on video is what I've seen the most in that space. But we've actually always worked virtually ourselves as well.
Yeah. And are there any, are you finding that there's clients that were maybe like really bad in person that are better in video or vice versa? Like how is it playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are just as I said, they're just more comfortable on video now, and I think people are realizing how easy it is in a lot of cases. It saves a lot in terms of like travel time. Actually, like the small talk conversation on the end or in the beginning and the end is oftentimes a lot faster. So I think overall, people are hopefully realizing that yes, you miss some of the benefit of meeting in person than a connection to see someone face to face, but video is a nice, I think, second option to still see someone, still be able to connect with someone, save a lot of time as well on top of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess what I'm getting at is like what we've seen is that it's sort of forced a lot of our clients to have to really make their value propositions a lot more concise and specific than they might have been in the past, because they might have. I don't know. It plays out in different ways, different situations. But what we've seen is like a lot of agencies out there, they might have gotten to the pitch deck after somebody was kind of emotionally or rationally invested in moving forward. Maybe they got referred and then they did a whining and dining thing for a week.
Yeah.
Then they got to a pitch, and then the pitch kind of, maybe it was to varying degrees kind of window dressing. And I'm not saying that's always how it plays out. Like absolutely the strategy is always a big thing, but now like they've really had to just kind of zero in. So I just love to compare notes on that and see if you guys have seen the same thing or different.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a great point in terms of, you miss a lot of that personal connection on the front end, that relationship building on the front end before you even get to the point where you're ready to pitch, obviously, when you're not meeting in person. And so I do think that's a good point in terms of like bringing your value proposition earlier on than you probably would have, because, that's, if you're missing all that relationship building, you have to stand apart somehow from your competition, or they're just going to look at price. And that's never a situation you want to be in.
Right, exactly. And one thing that I know you guys are at the forefront of is this kind of what to do in house versus what to outsource, right? And I think in our experience, there's been a lot of sacred cows that are kind of getting killed, right? There's this whole idea that we can never outsource that; we have to do that in house. But now everybody's kind of out of house. Everybody's at least physically detached.
Yeah.
So I think there's more open mindedness to renting things as opposed to buying them. But I know you guys kind of have a different against the grain approach to that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on outsourcing and what to do internally versus externally.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a small organization. We have been for forever. And that's, by choice, we choose to stay small. And so, we have John, the owner, we have myself, and then 3 employees that are our full-time or part-time employees. And then the rest we outsource. And so, what the full-time employees, myself and John do is, we produce a lot of content. So John does a lot of speaking. He's written several books. He does a lot of podcast interviews, all that good stuff. I do a lot of our operations and strategy and sales. And so those are the types of things that we hold on to. And then, when we're working with clients, when we're in engagements with clients, we hold on to like a lot of the strategy, project management, direction, all of that really important stuff. And then we're able to outsource a lot of the implementation to different relationships, different partners that we've developed over the years. And so, we're big on strategy, sales, operations, that type of stuff we keep in-house. Stuff that we outsource or get help with is, for ourselves and clients is, stuff like content production, website builds, design work, stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And my understanding is, one thing that I think DTM is big on is the idea of like, why rent marketing when you can own it. Can you go into that a little bit and just kind of what you guys are getting at there and how that works?
Yeah, it's kind of maybe sounds funny at first hearing about a marketing agency say why why rent marketing when you can own it. It's something that we're really big on, that we've uncovered, that we've known there's been a need for over the last several years, but we're going kind of all in on it in 2021. And the idea is, it's not enough today to just be able to outsource your marketing fully as an organization. We believe that getting help from a marketing consultant or an expert is really important, but then keeping certain things in-house is really important as well. And so that's how we're approaching our relationships with clients is, you bring us on as a consultant, we're a mentor, we're a coach, we send you through our training program, we help you create strategy for your own business. We stay involved long-term to help train that person and keep them up to speed, but really having an internal asset that you're able to develop and grow and have that person being involved in strategy and have that person understand why they're doing what they're doing is really important. And then when you move into implementation with a business, that person then is able to share the company's culture, which I think is really important, and also connect, as we were talking about earlier, connect with the clients as an internal person as well. And so those elements we've found are harder to outsource. And so that's why we think the combination model of, keeping a consultant on as a mentor, but also training someone in-house makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah, and I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. So, how do you figure out, what marketing tasks should stay in house versus out of house? Like, is it the same for everybody? Is it like where does that demarcation live?
A lot of it's dependent on the setup of the business. So who do they have? And so let's say they start working with us and they have, an entry level marketing manager that has graduated college and can, write some content and understand social media, but they have no idea how to develop a website or something like that. I think there's really great partners. I don't think you need to have an internal person that can build a website from scratch and knows the odds and ends. I think it's important that they know how to work WordPress and how to install plugins and how to write content, optimize it from an SEO standpoint. Those things are important, but maybe not having someone in-house that has to develop the website from ground up, because that's something you can outsource and it takes a lot of time and energy and effort to learn. And so, in terms of what that person should be doing on a regular basis, a lot of it's writing content, it's connecting with people on social media, those types of projects.
Right, right. So it sounds like it's more of kind of a agnostic marketing role with the right skills as opposed to a specialist in any one channel, if I understand right.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you need something for a specialist, that's where we would go back to, it's possible to outsource for something like building a website from scratch. But the in-house person can learn enough to be able to add new pages and, add new blog posts and optimize content. So they need to
Right.
know enough, but not necessarily need to be okay, step one, this is how I design a website or build a website.
Yeah, makes sense. And for a lot of our audience, it's boutique agencies, right? So they have whatever 10, 20, 30, 50, even 100 employees sometimes, but there's still, there's still kind of this perpetual cobbler's children problem where they're serving their clients well, not really marketing themselves. And then the marketing kind of comes down to, various utility players kind of part-time running around trying to do different marketing projects and start and stop campaigns for, internally within the agency. So I guess, with somebody in that position, let's say they have whatever, a couple dozen employees, should the goal be to definitely get that dedicated marketing role? Or do you think it is possible to kind of have a system whereby you're saying, hey, everybody, let's get in the room once a month and then figure out, what part-time marketing tasks people are doing? What have you seen work? What do you think is actually sustainable?
Yeah. So for us, I can speak on our experiences. We actually, as I said, we're a small team. There's 5 of us, and one of the team members is a dedicated marketing person, because we actually, I can relate to, the audience, the agency owners that you're speaking of, because in the past we were just kind of piecing together our own marketing because we were so busy doing everything else, that it was hard to really be effective with our own marketing. So we brought in a part-time person to really run with it and manage it, and have someone in charge of it all. Because we're big on, this is what we preach every day, is starting with strategy, seeing it out, mapping out a full entire plan, and following the plan because you're working towards something. And so that's what we teach all of our clients to do. And we realized that, we were getting busy and we weren't really taking a step back and looking at our own marketing in a strategic way. And so I think it could be possible to piece it together, but I think it's really important to have that dedicated person.
Yeah, makes sense. It's definitely important,
Yeah.
So with what we find, and my guess is you guys are up against common situations like this, is that we're often working with an agency, or it could be, in your case, a small business, but it's a company that's sort of built themselves up on referrals, word of mouth, and stuff that is sporadic and hard to scale. And they're essentially getting used to selling to somebody that doesn't know them, that's not solution aware yet, and that sort of thing. And we're biased because we're sort of like, a man or woman with a hammer. We're really good at outreach, and that's usually how we're starting it, which is the idea of, knocking on doors in the right way to build relationships and get meetings for our clients. My guess is you guys can be a little bit more agnostic than that. So I just love to learn a little bit, for that company that's starting with referrals and looking to get out past that. Where do they begin? I think there's like so much hand wringing. There's this giant buffet of different options in terms of lead channels and marketing channels. Like, how do you guys get people centered? Like, what constraints are you introducing to figure that out at the beginning?
Yeah. I mean, we see that all the time. Like, people are able to grow to a certain level on referrals and then they kind of get stuck. And so in order to grow to the next level, they need to invest in something like outbound or just marketing in general, to really get in front of more people. And so that is like one of the most common situations where we start working with our clients. And really where we help them is, that's another area where then, okay, so they've gotten to a certain point with referrals, and then they hear they should be doing like paid advertising, or they should be focusing on SEO, or they should be focusing on producing content. And so they just start trying things with no set plan in place. And that's where they end up wasting a lot of money, unfortunately. And so that's where we come in and say, let's take a step back and understand like who your clients are, what their pain points are, how do you solve their pain points, and like where are they hanging out? Like, all those things are really important. And then their value proposition, we call it core message. And so what it is that you do uniquely that can help solve their problems. And so until you do all that, it's hard to really be effective in the different marketing tactics or channels, because all of that work will help guide your content and channels and focus moving forward. Because we'll uncover with that research, like, does it make sense to do something like paid advertising for your specific audience or not?
Right. That makes sense. And I think a big part of that creates a lot of hand wringing is positioning and specialization. I used to think of it more as niching, and I've since changed the semantic, to specialization, because I think it can be a little bit broader than that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, how focused should an agency be? How flexible should they be about going outside of that lane? Like, what have you guys found to work there?
Yeah, it's interesting. You said you used to be more like along the lines of being niche focused and have kind of broadened. We're the same way. I'd say in the past, we were big on specializing on a specific niche and kind of focusing on it. But over the last several years, we've definitely broadened our mindset on that as well. And so it's less about like focusing on a specific industry, and it's more about focusing on a type of business is typically what we recommend to our agency owners. So it's focusing on like professional services or home services or local businesses or B2B or B2C, but focusing on a group of businesses, a more broad range, that allows you to really understand them well, but you're not so niched down to only working like with something like dentists, for example.
Right. Makes sense. And what we always encounter is just so much like fear and anxiety about actually making a stand and saying, okay, we're going to change the site, and this is going to say like we do marketing for professional services or whatever it is. Like, how much of that resistance do you guys encounter, and how do you typically get clients over it?
Yeah. So We receive a little bit about it. I think a little bit of resistance. I think we received more resistance when it was being more narrow focused. Now that it's a little bit more broad, it's easier to take in. If I'm getting a lot of resistance from a consultant or agency owner that I'm working with, I say, okay, let's get even more broad as you're just getting started, and then as you continue to get the experience and you continue to start working with clients, maybe you decide you want to narrow it down even further. Because I think it's easier to go from a little bit more broad in the beginning to narrowing it down to being more focused, versus if you get really niche focused from the beginning, you only work with lawyers, let's say, then it's harder to kind of grow out of that specific niche. So, if I'm getting that resistance, I say, okay, let's broaden, and then we'll focus over the years when you get more and more experience.
Right, right. And I think as part of that, like what we are often helping with in a more specific way is like figuring out what that niche might be, or like, where do we focus on in this moment? Because usually we're working with a company that's worked with a whole bunch of different industries. And then we encounter a lot of day trading, as I like to call it, where there's sort of like, well, there's money here, there's money over in whatever cybersecurity right now, so we should focus on cybersecurity. And my response has always been, well, maybe you should. Can you guys close deals there? Can you actually demonstrate that you can be useful to that market?
Yeah.
Or is it completely new and speculative? So I'd love to hear your thoughts there. Like, how important, I guess to get to a question, like how important do you think the macro forces are, or rather should be on the way that companies are specializing?
Yeah, a lot of, when I'm helping someone decide how to specialize or what they should specialize in, I think it comes down to like, is there opportunity in that specific industry or group, kind of as you identified? Is there opportunity? Can you sell there? Do your solutions work there? Is your message going to resonate with them? What does your background experience look like? Like a lot of times when people join us, and we're training them. Maybe they have worked in a specific industry in the past, like full time in a different position that wasn't even marketing. So they know people in the industry, they know relationships, they know how to talk the talk. And so it's kind of a mixture of like, what does your specific skill set bring to the table? Do your solutions meet their needs? Is there a need there? So it's looking at all of those things kind of together.
Right, right, exactly. And then I think the big thing is like sticking with it long enough, right? Because there's so much recency bias. Like we see this a lot where it's like, man, we just had the worst time with the client of XYZ industry. Like we just don't want to do this anymore. And it's like, but that's like all of your, that's all of your portfolio. Like you guys have done such great work there. So I guess is there I'm trying to think of the right question, but is there an amount of time or way that you can help clients actually look at results when you don't have this like massive fire hose of data like you would a consumer? Like when you have a company that's just dealing with like maybe a few different clients from one industry at most over the course of a year, how they actually figure out like what's going to be effective for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you always have to be continuing to analyze it. As you said, I think one of the things that a lot of business owners will admit to is the kind of the shiny object syndrome. So it's not only like, oh, maybe I'll work in this industry, but it's like this new tool, this new process, this new thing I need. And so I think it's really important, and we're guilty of this ourselves, is to stay as focused as possible. And so set, a specific commitment, like we're going to focus on this industry for at least a year and see it out. But like throughout the whole entire year, like continue to reevaluate and see if it makes sense and pay attention and see how the relationships are going and seeing the results. And, so it like continue to analysis throughout the whole entire year as well.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And it's sometimes that can be tough, and it takes just kind of hanging in there to figure it out.
Yeah.
So to bring this to that agency that's like thinking, okay, I'm finally going to get my act together, like no more cobbler's children. We're going to hire, a dedicated marketing person. Where do you look for this person? There's all sorts of different schools of thought. There's different methods of hiring. There's the referral based, getting applicants from referrals and all this stuff. Like what's that starting place? Like how are you developing the parameters? Like how are you typically getting started with that process?
Yeah, I think, whenever we start looking at it for ourselves, we do start a lot with referrals because we know a lot of people in the industry. And so just going out there and asking people, that we have relationships with, if they know anyone that's looking, is typically how we start and would recommend, starting. Because I think if obviously a referral, a lot of trust is always built into referrals. But we actually have had a lot of luck with Upwork as well, platforms like that. We've gotten some really great people through Upwork, as long as you're really diligent about the interview process and expectations. I think you can find great people through sites like that.
Yeah, I'd love to nerd out on that for a minute because we've used Upwork forever and have had pretty good results with it. Some mixed, but overall good. And I think what I've found, and I'd love to hear like how this maps with what you guys see, is that we actually select for the people that have less Upwork experience. So we'll figure out like, okay, we don't want somebody that's like a career Upworker. We want somebody that might have like two or three other clients. We get that we can't buy all their time, and they have generally good reviews and that sort of thing. But we don't want to use the filters that Upworks wants us to use a lot of the times, or whatever similar program. How have you how closely does that map to the way you guys approach it, and what have you guys found to work? Yeah.
No, I think that's a great way to approach it. That's exactly what we're looking for as well. Like you said, we don't want someone that's just like looking for a bunch of side work and they're not really going to get invested in our company at all. We're more looking for someone that we can take maybe most of their hours, even not all of them, that's fine, but maybe even most of their hours, and treat them almost like a full-time employee, and take care of them and involve them in our strategy meetings and all of that, because then they're more invested than someone that's just doing some part-time work as like one of 10 other companies. And so we approach it the same way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And kind of bringing this to the end of the time, I'd love to just hear, what are you guys up to these days? Like I know that there's a lot of different irons in the fire at Duct Tape Marketing. So I'd love to hear what's new.
Yeah. So the biggest things are our new certified marketing manager coaching program that we discussed a little bit. And that's essentially that we're teaching businesses to own their marketing instead of renting it. So that's one of our big launches that we're doing. And then John's book, as I mentioned as well, The Ultimate Marketing Engine, will be coming out next year. And aside from that, just running our consultant network as we usually do, which is consultants and agency owners that are essentially certified in duct tape marketing. And the ultimate goal of that is to make an impact in small to medium-sized businesses around the world.
Awesome. And I think that this is the sort of interview where afterwards I'll come up with like 500 more questions related to like content marketing and content creation and all the things that you just talked about that you're doing internally. So hopefully we'll have you back on in the future, Sarah, but I really appreciate your time. And how can people get in touch with you?
They can just shoot me an email if they want. And that's Sarah@ducttapemarketing.com.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.